Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Fast Growing Trees. More on that later. In fact, actually, more on that later from my garden. And I'm joined with Wes Hilliard, who is delighted. I can tell you right now, he is delighted that there is actually games news this week. Yeah, we're just not going to get to it right away. Got to tease that out a little bit. Also, if you are an AppleInsider Plus subscriber this week, you're getting not one, not two, but three WWDC wish lists. Apple's, I don't know, you'd call them like they're quieter, they're smaller, basically tvOS, watchOS, and who knows, maybe HomeOS. They are getting the AppleInsider Plus treatment, otherwise known as fingers crossed predictions. If you're not a subscriber to AppleInsider Plus yet, well, then you can fix that so easily. Join us through Apple Podcast subscriptions or via Patreon. Full instructions in the show notes, and either way, it'd be a treat to have you with us. But now, still not going to talk about games yet. It said, Wes, WWDC, it's like 6.5 pixels away from us, and it's all happening now, isn't it? The rumour mill is like fully staffed. It's very busy, and I thought the biggest news this week, the one that I totally didn't expect, was this business of the names changing, or almost certainly the names changing of, well, everything, really. Did you see this coming? Can you explain it all to me?
So, there's a lot going on here. Seems that with the redesign, Apple wanted to kind of openly make a decision of let's reunify them through design and reunify everything through naming. And now, instead of referring to each one, basically ever since macOS X, we've
macOS 10.
macOS letter. We've referred to them numerically and iterated on them by one, depending on which year they were released. So right now we have iOS 18, visionOS 2, watchOS 11. It's very easy to figure out if you think about it. Not really. But Apple's going to unify everything under a year.
Except it's next year. It's going to be macOS 26 or so, when it's the one that came out in 25. I do agree that it's sensible to restructure all of them, because even there, actually, as you were describing it, I realised, no, hang on, there's something wrong there. It didn't iterate every year. OS 10 was OS 10 for such a long time, and then in 2020, it was OS 11, and then OS 12, and now we've carried on for this. But then they also have the extra layer of names, and I realised when this was first mooted a couple of days ago, now as we record this, it has actually been 12 years since Apple changed to naming not OS 10 anymore, from calling it OS 10 cat name to macOS California place name. 12 years of that, which actually shocked me a little bit. But would you believe it was 11 years before that they started calling them after cats? I mean, it's a little muddier there because it was originally just an internal thing. So when's the first one? I don't know. But 11 years of one, 12 of the next.
When was Mac OS 10 a thing? Like, when did that start?
All my life. OS 10 was fantastic. Late 90s into early 2000s. I remember installing the betas about 2001 and getting...
So we'd be at like Mac... If they had just done the numerical numbers from the start, we'd be at like Mac OS 27 or something.
Oh, Mac OS, I think. Yeah.
In any case, it's just these numbers are getting unwieldy, and I think Apple just wanted to do something with it. And I wonder if this hints at a possible iPhone name change and future device name changes. We've seen them readdress names with iPads. They no longer, they're not really iterating them on them by number anymore. They're calling it a feature. This is the iPad with USB-C, or this is the iPad Pro 13-inch. And that's kind of how they're iterating on it. And then they'll just say iPad Pro 13-inch with nano texture 2025, right? That's how they are iterating on the names with these devices. iPhone is still year by year, but maybe we won't get an iPhone 17 this year. Maybe we'll get an iPhone 26. But back to the names, yes, I think it actually is fine that they're going to call it 26 and not 25, because if you really think about it, yes, the developers get access immediately in June, but nobody else in the world gets access until almost October, basically 2 weeks, maybe a week before October. and then you have 3 months of 2025, and then suddenly it's behind again. Now it's 2026, and we're operating on iOS 25. Apple looks behind. It looks bad. It's the same reason why car manufacturers call their vehicles that they release in the fall by the next year's name, because that's going to be the vehicle for the next calendar year. So you don't want the Honda Civic 2016 in 2017 being the new vehicle. It doesn't look right on paper. So yeah, and nobody pays attention to this anyway, and the people who might even notice would even say, oh, we're getting it early, or this is like early access. This is cool. I get the next year's operating system now kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways in marketing this makes sense, and it doesn't really make sense the other way. It doesn't really make sense to call it 25, even though arguably it's in the year that it released.
I see that. I'm not fully persuaded, because there's going to come a time when I say to you, so when did macOS 26 come out? Because I'll have to check. No, it was 25, wasn't it? And mind you, how many of us spend our days thinking of the exact release dates of operating systems? Okay, I take your point there.
We're not going to actually call it iOS 26, even on the show, in real life, whatever. Apple even. I dare say this is basically going to be a parentheses moment where Apple's just going to go on stage and say, here's iOS. And everywhere that you look in documentation, it might refer to it as the 2026 edition of iOS. But I don't know why this happened, but version numbering became marketing at some point. I blame Windows 95, right? I blame stuff like that. Windows actually went by year for a little bit, and then they went to numbers, and then back to years, and then back to numbers. They don't know what to do.
Well, there's a reason for that. Windows 95 was supposed to be followed by 97, which is an absolute joke. I think that they made it by 98, but they never hit the years. They said, actually, sorry, I've got to say this because you put it right in my head. I am suddenly back in a newsroom listening on a conference call when Microsoft announced that Chicago was going to be called Windows 95. And I can remember just all the journalists looking at each other across the room going, really? But, okay, and then you get used to everything. So we'll get used to this, I suppose. Except you do raise an interesting point. You're right that Apple never says macOS 15, the current one. Or is it 16? No,
15.
15, thank you. They always say macOS Sequoia or whatever. Is this the end of place names? Will Craig Federighi no longer be able to do those jokes about the crack marketing team and emphasis on crack for it? That could be sad.
I don't think that's the end of this. This is separate because this whole time there has been a macOS version number, right? We're on 15. Yeah. Next year would have been 16. The place names aren't going anywhere. I just think this is just a clear delineation of Tim Cook walks out on stage and says, hey guys, welcome to WWDC. Let's start with iOS. And a big iOS thing comes up on screen. They announce here's everything coming out for iOS this year. And maybe at some point a thing pops up and calls it iOS 26. I honestly doubt it. You might even get the URL to Apple's website will be iOS-26. But then on the page, it won't actually refer to itself that way. I think this is just a remix of the marketing. You don't need to have a version number. People don't even know that their phone runs iOS, let alone what number it is. Yes. So, I don't know. We'll see what Apple does here. I'm totally fine with it. It literally doesn't matter. I've been writing stuff on this since the announcement, and it's basically been an iteration of, yeah, it doesn't matter. All the rumors are the same. Still a redesign, still have this, still have that. It's still iOS 19. It's just a different name.
I was writing about macOS 16, and the morning this broke, and when we looked into it, and we seemed to be able to, you can't confirm until you know it for sure, but it looks so likely. I had to do a search and replace on the number 1 and replace it with 2. You know how much work that added to it, isn't it?
I want to point out one last little thing. I've seen a few people mention, but what about the year 2100? I'm like, we'll be dead. It doesn't matter.
Well, that took a bleak turn.
It's just, It's like, oh, you get to the Y2K issue. What are they going to do? Call it iOS A1? No. Look, the name will change 6 times in the next 20 years. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well, thank you for worrying me and reassuring me in the same go. But you're just putting off the exciting stuff. Solarium. Hang on, am I pronouncing that right? Solarium is where you go get a tan, isn't it, or something?
I believe it's more of a plant thing, like a sunroom.
Right. Well, obviously that's what I need in my Mac, isn't it? So nothing. What I've heard is the same as I'm sure you, Sean, as everybody's heard, is that there's going to be some big visual change, but I don't really understand what that could possibly be. I mean, surely a Mac is still going to look like a Mac, although I presume this oft repeated thing that everything's going to look like a Vision Pro in the future. And you are Vision Pro, man. So, are you pro Vision Pro?
A sunroom is a room like Americans might have. You might have these. They're primarily surrounded by screens, but they do open to the outside. They let light in naturally. But a solarium, instead of it being made more of like a screens kind of thing, it's made with glass, and it lets you look out at the sky unobstructed, stargazing from indoors. It can be temperature controlled. So that's the difference. So a solarium is just a very beautiful, wide open space with transparent glass and wide open views.
Well, A, we would probably call that a conservatory here in the UK, and 2, I could see I held your attention while you went off to look that up. What do you know about Vision Pro coming to the Mac? Are you looking forward to it as a Vision Pro? Well, not just user, but you really like it, don't you? So
I can research and listen to you at the same time. No, I did hear you about the Vision OS redesign and how much I like Vision OS. I think it makes sense. I mentioned it before. I mentioned it in our AppleInsider Plus segment where we did predictions, and I'm thinking having Vision OS everywhere allows for some interesting stuff. Like if you bring macOS into Vision OS, maybe you will be able to pop out the macOS apps into individual Vision OS windows because the UI Chrome will essentially be the same. I'm sitting here looking at it right now. It's fine. It has transparency. It lets me see bits and pieces of color through certain elements. It kind of blends together. The popover elements are interesting to look at. Menus, and it's not that dramatically different. I know it is very different from iOS in a lot of ways, but I still have a feeling that macOS, iOS, and these other operating systems are going to essentially look like they have. They're just... It's the Aqua. It's the Windows Vista-ification. You know, the windows are still going to be Windows. It's just going to have a bit of glass plating over it with some reflection qualities.
Well, I kind of hope so, because when you were describing it there, I thought, well, this sounds very nice for Vision Pro users. Their Mac looks like their Vision Pro. I don't see me switching to Vision Pro for a lot of years, and it's a lot cheaper. So why do I have to put up with Vision Pro? Well, this is what I want. So,
yeah, I believe so. A visual redesign, sure, but how far is it going to go? Mark Gurman seems insistent that it's going to be this incredibly complex, deep redesign across all the operating systems, which would be interesting. Apple's theoretically been working on this for 2 years now. They were meant to announce it last year, but AI got in the way. They pushed it back a year, so now they've been polishing it behind the scenes this whole time. I don't know. I think it could work. I mean, like I said, it maybe the windowing elements. So if I'm looking at macOS right now, I see the what do you call them? Because the menu bar is on the top of the screen. What is the bar on top of the window?
Menu bars. Oh, top of the window. It's a title bar. The one that has the traffic lights.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the title bar is physically attached to the windows, and I see the traffic lights. Imagine basically detaching that ever so slightly by like 3 pixels and having it hover above the window with bubble shapes, and then having it be glassy so you can see your wallpaper behind the detached portion, and then the window below it, all the Chrome, is basically identical because it's a window showing an app, right? That's how Vision OS looks today. And then when you open a menu or open a modal, it is also that Chromey transparency-ish stuff. But the app itself is still, like, I'm looking at Safari right now. It looks like Safari. It just has some extra Chrome around it that makes it look flashy and fancy inside of Vision OS. These floating objects, these transparent objects, I think are the key differentiator in Vision OS, and I think that's what's coming to iOS, macOS, iPadOS.
Is there a functional benefit to the gap between the title bar and the app? Because it doesn't sound like there is.
I guess it looks nice. Functionally, though, maybe not. It allows for certain things. So it allows elements to fade and disappear and move around. There's a lot more movement in Vision OS. So right now, if I'm looking at Safari, the title bar is just sitting there, the address bar. If I look at it, though, it animates fluidly and pops down to show the tab bar, which actually overlaps with the content on the page because it is hovering technically in 3D above the window. So I expect you would be able to have more interactive elements in that way, more popovers, more effects, more animations. Again, functionality-wise, I don't think that's what the aim is here. I don't think they're trying to make people more productive with this redesign. But from my perspective, I don't think it's going to reduce productivity either. I think it's going to be swapping one look for another, like a skin on Android or something.
I would hope that there was more, because as much as I generally like Apple's design, I kind of, form follows function for me. Just unnecessary. Well, I was going to go as far as to say graffiti, so that doesn't appeal. But
Steve Jobs said design is how it works, right? So
yes.
I have to imagine that this isn't just a skin. I mean, a part of it will be, and I think that's some of the more cynical people will look at it and say, well, all they've done is color everything pretty. Okay. There's probably going to be some element of the functionality where they're looking at how does this interact with the hardware? How can we utilize this in a way that makes sense? They also discussed, right, there's a rumor of iPadOS getting a menu bar. And perhaps that could be implemented in a way that is Vision OS-y as well. I don't know. Like, there's so much here that is unknown that unless it literally leaks visually, other than John Prosser's renders, which are apparently also incomplete, according to Mark Gurman, unless it actually leaks completely before WWDC, I don't think we're going to know until the event, which I'm fine with. I think this will be one of those very rare moments where Apple can truly surprise us with something, and I hope they do a good job with it.
Okay, well, we only have to hang on for about 5 pixels now, and it'll be WWDC time, so we'll see. But look, okay, tell you what, since I'm really focused on June the 9th, let's look further ahead, because we have been told this week, the future of all smartphones, and also basically how Apple is rubbish at things. Nothing's CEO proclaimed that all apps will die. There will only be an OS on the phones, which he obviously hopes will be his own Nothing phones. So the entire app ecosystem gone in 7 to 10 years, and AI on your phone will not help you do what you want to do. It'll know what you want to do, and it will do it for you. I think you can hear in the tone of the voice that I'm not buying this a little bit. Were you more convinced than I am?
Nothing is in a weird place in the Android ecosystem. They're truly very affordable. Like, I've actually considered and may still buy their Nothing cheap phone. It's like $200. It has a decent camera, a decent chipset. I could get a real Android experience out of it, which is kind of my goal with this purchase. I would want to tinker with Android. But that's what they're good for. They make some very premium phones with flashy lights on the back. I don't know what they're doing there. It kind of is a gimmick that flopped. They apparently are less than 1% of the Android install base. But it's still a company, and they have some interesting ideas around smartphones and designs. But this CEO, it sounds a lot like the Sam Altmans of the world, these other just grandiose proclamations of how interesting and powerful AI is, which I still don't buy because there's just been no evidence of it. But apparently, in whatever future, 2 years, 10 years, 100 years, eventually you will have a smartphone device, presumably a nothing phone, where there's only the operating system, meaning an AI robot. And when you open the phone, maybe you don't even have to ask. Maybe it just knows. You're going to check your social media. Here is your social media presented in an app that I just wrote, right? Which, sure. Mm-hmm. Or you say, I really want to play Angry Birds, so it's going to write from scratch an Angry Birds game for you to play or something. I don't know, but presumably this AI would just be able to go from request to code to execution and then basically ship an app in real time to the screen and let you fool around with it. And then that app goes away and then it goes on to the next task all instantaneously very quickly, because AI is this super powerful God mode that lets you do anything you want. Of course, you can materialize whatever your dreams may be, and that's going to replace all operating systems and iPhones and devices and millions of jobs and the app economy. And yeah, that's definitely the future.
Well, not to suggest that Occam's razor is a bit blunt today, but the opposite of this is, but by making proclamations like that, you get attention. And look what we've just done. We've paid attention to nothing. And I tell you, I haven't thought about nothing since they first were announced. But looking into this, because I wrote about this when the interview came out, I got so confused because somewhere on the line, the Nothing company is boasting about how in, I think it's July, they're launching the Nothing 3, the Phone 3. But they're already selling the Phone 3A. And okay, you mentioned marketing and numbering and things. That feels like it's got the maths and the marketing wrong somehow.
Pixel does this, but opposite. They release their number phone, and then the A phone is their lesser. Nothing releases their lesser, and then their premium. So it's just backwards.
Okay. How about we talk about a real phone then? Because the iPhone 17 or whatever it gets called this year, we now know for an absolute fact that it's going to take, it's not an absolute fact, people are just claiming, more proclamations for attention, that it will have a 200 megapixel camera. Now, you are again the person to ask this because you're the camera guy, but doesn't Samsung already have 200 megapixels or millions of them somehow?
So this is, I made an iPhone 17 category, but this is actually a undefined feature iPhone. I thought there would be more iPhone 17 news this week, but so this is a rumor, I guess it's come and gone. Megapixel count and a camera is a thing you can manipulate to get different results. Samsung does have a 200 megapixel camera in their S25 Ultra, I believe. Mm. It's not actually, or well, you can force it to. It's just dreadfully bad. You don't actually take a 200 megapixel photo. It's bent, right? But you get to claim that your camera is 200 megapixels. It looks really good in advertising and marketing. But what you're actually getting is maybe I don't really know what Samsung's bending is doing. If I had to guess, it's 24, maybe even 50 megapixels ish. They're in that range. Whatever is divisible by a number, because basically what they're doing is chopping up that 200 megapixel sensor into 5, 6, 10 smaller pixel sensors that it in software is pretending like it's multiple sensors, and each sensor is doing different things. It's going to focus on exposure, detail, taking different gradients of exposure, taking different different things just to combine it into one composite super image, which is what iPhone does today. It has a 48 megapixel sensor. You're not taking 48 megapixel photos. Your output is usually 24. You're just compositing multiple elements into one photo. So a 200 megapixel iPhone camera, sure, what it would actually do is like it would give us more style effort. What is that silly thing called? We called sweater mode, right? It'll give us an.
I don't know that one. Sweater mode.
Yeah, well, this is a few years ago now. because more recently the pipeline changed.
The computational photography changed.
It's all that's all it is computational photography. That's the that's the technology. But Apple had some names for it. One of them, they showed off all these gorgeous people wearing sweaters, and the sweaters were just highly detailed. So everyone called it sweater mode because that's all of Apple's example photos was.
I truly thought you meant people who were, shall we say, over-exercising or something like that. I didn't. Okay, I can accept that now. It's more woolen than perspiration. Jumpers, yes, that is a British word. Okay.
Jumper mode. It doesn't have quite the same ring to it.
It doesn't. You're right there. Okay. Yeah. English lets me down. But okay, so sweater mode.
But that one actually evolved. I hate that I'm forgetting the words for this because the pipeline is actually very interesting. It's what led us to the photographic styles, but basically Apple has this pipeline of photography that allows it to multiple exposures and combine it into a final photo. This was something that they perfected many years ago and then have been building on since with multiple technology increases. Anyway, this is something that would be applied to that. It would just allow them to have more pixels available for brighter photos if they're using it that way. But if you try to force it to take a 200 megapixel photo like you can on Samsung, you're going to get this grainy, kind of dark, dim looking photo that just doesn't quite... It's not what you would expect from a spec like 200 megapixels. Samsung has multiple lenses, just like iPhone does, that lets you capture at various zoom levels, and then its mega zoom cameras usually have higher megapixel counts, which lets you crop in more. Apple could repeat the same. A 200 megapixel main sensor would allow you to have wildly crazy zoom levels in between the 1x and 5x, maybe more detail, and maybe then Apple could implement a similar technology on their zoom lens, 48 megapixel, get even further, do even better, that kind of stuff.
Really, I think what you're saying is size doesn't matter. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Just the numbers are silly. It's a spec game. Don't pay attention to megapixels. I remember several years ago, this might have been 15 years ago, going to Best Buy, and the cameras all lined up on a booth, and it's like, this Sony camera captures 40 megapixels. That was a lot back then. That was impressive because most digital still cameras at the time, 8, 10 megapixels, 12 if you're getting kind of crazy. But this one was like, it's 40 megapixels, and it didn't really do that well because you lose so much because you're actually, the more pixels you have, the less light can get in because they're getting smaller. So you have to use more of it for exposure or take longer exposure. It's a whole thing. The way we're using megapixels today is not like that. We're using them as additional light sensors and stuff like that, so you can take better photos. Computational photography has allowed us to do better. So I wouldn't read into this too much. If Apple does it, great. The end user isn't going to notice. You're still going to output a 24. Maybe Apple increased the final resolution a little bit, but 24 megapixel end result. Just better looking, more detail, more lighting, that kind of stuff.
This episode is brought to you by Fast Growing Trees. Did you know that Fast Growing Trees is the biggest garden nursery in the US with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? They have all the plants your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plants you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Now, I'm in the UK, so I can't buy from Fast Growing Trees for myself. I have as a present for a friend in the States. But just at this moment, you're in the UK with me. I'm speaking to you from my garden, although actually as soon as I came out, all the birds decided to go quiet on me. So maybe you can't hear them, but also you definitely can't see that over there where we have roses growing, or over there where, well, at the moment we really just have chippings from when we had to have a damaged tree taken down, but also where eventually we plan to fill the space with more plants. Well, I could go on, but the thing is, even without my being able to do what you can and order direct from Fast Growing Trees to get plants at your door in days, I will be using the Fast Growing Trees site to help me pick the plants we're adding, and I have already used it for advice about those roses over there. But right alongside this massive, massive range of plants, Fast Growing Trees has a massive, massive resource centre. There are expert guides to, well, seemingly just about everything to do with gardening, and even countless videos on plant selection, plant care. Plus, you can get advice when you're buying, and Fast Growing Trees also offers an Alive and Thrive guarantee. I love that name. Then this spring they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals, and listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code AppleInsider at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code AppleInsider at checkout. fastgrowingtrees.com, code AppleInsider. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use Apple Insider to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. And thanks to Fast Growing Trees for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. So, previously on this episode of the Apple Insider Podcast, I have said, Wes, that you are the man to talk to because of Apple Vision Pro and how it might seep in to all the other platforms. I've said you're the guy about cameras and things. It's time now. This has got to be your shining moment here, because for once, brand new game news from Apple. Do you want to just take it away and enthuse at me and see if you can pronounce the name of a game that I'm struggling with?
Deep Fusion is the name of the technology for the camera.
Okay.
But as far as Apple...
Right. I thought that was a game. I thought I could pronounce Deep Fusion.
That does sound like a game. And Deep Fusion has actually been incorporated into Apple's latest camera technologies, which I still haven't found the answer to that. But as far as Apple Games goes, this sounds interesting. So I actually wrote about this one. I believe this is from Bloomberg again. It's interesting, but we heard about this a year ago, actually, in October. And I don't think this report actually has anything particularly new in it.
I don't remember hearing this before. Hang on, we should need to explain. There are two parts to this, isn't it? Apple has bought a company that makes a game that I'm struggling to pronounce, and I was hoping you'd help me out with there. And they're also somehow expected to launch something else at WWDC. The bare open, got to fill it with something padding WWDC this year will include games things. But this was announced before. You've been expecting this, have you?
Well, okay, so the first news is Apple bought Rack 7, who makes Sneaky Sasquatch. Separate?
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a weird acquisition because I think it's a two-person studio. They make this game, which has, I think, always been at the top of the charts in Apple Arcade. It is actually a very fun, very cute, well-animated game. It's exclusive to Apple Arcade, but it's one of the games you should play if you have the service. It's really it's just fun, and they keep adding expansions to it. Like you can, the point of the game is you sneak around a campsite and then eventually a small town. You can go get a driver's license, but you have to be in disguise because you're a sneaky Sasquatch.
Okay.
It reminds me a lot of the Goose game that Panic made. Anyway, love it. Apple acquired that company, apparently. We don't know anything other than the acquisition exists. That was not even an Apple announcement, just some other report. But at the same time, like within hours, Gurman comes out with this report of actually Apple's working on this gaming app, which would bring Game Center. I don't know if you know about this. It still exists. It's just buried in settings or various
Oh,
app
yeah,
menus.
I keep switching it off. Yes, okay.
Yeah, so Game Center is a thing Apple's had for a while. I think since skeuomorphic days. Game Center used to have this green felt, like, pool table background. And you'd go into it and you could see what trophies and leaderboards you had. And that's just always been a thing. It has always been there, just in various menus. It used to have an app. It went away. It became part of settings. Now, in certain apps, if you press a certain button, it'll open Game Center and you can view your leaderboards and stuff. It's functionality's never changed, and it's always been there. It's just kind of in the background. Apple's going to bring Game Center back into this app and then add social functionality, apparently through FaceTime and iMessage, that allows you to either do voice chat, maybe video chat, and text chat while pairing with games, which is something like the Xbox app does. If you've ever played a video game on PlayStation or Xbox or something, and they have their own social features where you friend people and you can create your own specific terms are just not coming to me today. Lobby. Yes, you can create your own game lobby and join a game and go play together, right? So I'm assuming this is what this is going to do. It's going to allow you to group up with friends, create your own lobbies, jump into the latest version of Call of Duty Mobile as a group. But this game is external to that, but an API would be able to tie their lobbying system to this Apple Games app, right? There would also be additional social features. And on top of all of that, Apple's going to include the App Store newsletter. What is it called? The Today section would be in there with their, but specific to game news. And they would include a games page for Apple's App Store games page. So you could go download games from this Apple Games app, and Apple Arcade would be included in this. So it's kind of this gaming hub. And if this sounds familiar, I talked about a very similar function with the Backbone app when I talked about the Backbone Pro.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which has a social media channel, and it has game launching. And that's the last function I didn't get to, is Apple Games is apparently also going to that's what I called it. That's not the name. But that makes sense. It's an Apple Games. Anyway, the functionality would basically, you open the app, you join a party, you select the game you're going to play, and it launches you into that game. So this is a game launcher, social networking tool, and game discovery tool, basically, under Apple's umbrella.
Do you think... I'm intrigued by Apple buying this two-person studio, because it doesn't sound like an obvious thing. I mean, Apple often buys companies to get the talent, so from what you say, I'm sure these people are very talented, but is there some sort of business advantage to having a game developer in your portfolio? Does it give them an in with Apple in the App Store or something like that?
Well, I don't know what the acquisition of Sneaky Sasquatch is meant to do. The game theoretically is as developed as it's going to be. They could stop adding updates to it at any time, and then they could just quietly keep it updated to keep it running for years to come or whatever. But bringing them in, I think, is maybe, as you said, I don't think they're going to go in and make Apple studio games. They're not going to make like Apple developed first party games. I think they're going to be more of a consultancy, which allows them to have a little bit more of a visualization into what is it that game developers need? What are they looking for? And that, I think, is what you're getting into here, is having just someone on the inside that knows what the heck a video game is and how they're developed. Because the only game Apple's ever made is Texas Hold'em, and
I've forgotten that. Yes, okay,
which is still available on the App Store. And you can. There was also the Paper Wizard game with what's the investor's name?
Warren Buffett?
Warren Buffett, Paper Wizard. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He started life as a paper delivery boy, and so the game is you throw newspapers at houses, but then as the level progresses, you basically ride through Cupertino and arrive at Apple Park, and then you're delivering newspapers at Apple Park. It's a very silly game, and they removed it technically, but I think you can still download it if it's in your Apple App Store library. So just very, very funny that ever existed.
Okay. I know. Now that you've actually said the word aloud, Sasquatch, I was struggling to read it. I know that word from the $6 Million Man. There you go. Now I'm caught up to date with cultural reference from 50 years ago or something. I think the word I'm looking forward now is anyway. I should say we're an inch away from Controversy Corner, and I think the very next thing that actually you want to talk about is definitely heading that way. T-Mobile doing some untoward things this week. Are you a T-Mobile user in the States?
No, I use an MVNO. Anyway, it's called Visible. It's through the Verizon program.
Oh, right.
So neat. I'm not on T-Mobile. I've been tempted by them before because they seem to be a very Apple-friendly kind of thing, right?
Well, they certainly know how to screen record your iPhone. You got to give them that.
This is the weird part. So for years they've always had these iPhone deals, and they, like I said, they seem to be ahead of the game as far as partnering with Apple on certain things. But this is weird. The T-Life app, I guess, is their management app, right? You get Verizon Mobile, or this is where you pay your bills. Apparently, it has a screen recording feature that is on by default that records everything you do inside of the app. Weird. A lot of apps do this through tap tracking and stuff like that, but this is actually capturing what's happening on the screen, which means they can see what you're typing, and it's very sketchy. So you can go turn that off. We have the article in here. I hope they realize their mistake and get rid of that feature. Maybe it's an overambitious developer, I'm hoping, not rather than something malicious.
Well, I
right?
can tell you the quote from the spokespeople about it, defending it, was definitely, well, if you don't like it, you can turn it off, can't you? But they hadn't actually said that it was there. They never said how to turn it off and things like this. Well, I'm not cribbing. I am assuming, I'm hoping that like we're taking screenshots and things, it's basically not recording your screen per se, but recording the output of the app. Because otherwise, when you get a notification and you're in the middle of that app, that would be recorded, and that would be abominable. And even if I'm right, and notifications, they can't be captured, they can't, surely. But in that app, yes, you're paying, but apparently you can also do some kind of tracking of devices or people. I don't know if it's AirTag related or something, but that manner of things. So there's personal detail and location detail in there being recorded without your knowledge, without your permission, and being sent off to T-Mobile. And thank goodness T-Mobile has an absolutely perfect record in never being hacked by anybody at all, apart from that one massive time. I'm perturbed also that it got through the app review thing, but yeah, this
seems like one of those
icky,
ones,
I think. Yeah.
That it's like, oh, this is T-Mobile's business app. What? Like, all right, push it through. They're not going to do anything weird, right? Yeah. That feels like something like that might have happened.
Yeah. You see why I said this is heading towards Controversy Corner? I think I need to say we're now there. Yeah, if you haven't got this before, Controversy Corner was Wes's idea, where we have to report on what's happening in politics because it is directly affecting Apple and very likely directly affecting what we pay for Apple devices and services. It's news, it's happening, we've got to report it. But I'm like this sometimes. There are times when I've just got to walk away from certain types of news. If that's you, then look at the chapter markers for the show and skip past this section because we have something basically bright and shiny to make up for it afterwards. But for now, Wes, honestly, I don't really know where to start this week. The tariffs are gone, except they're not. Okay, do you want to just explain that to me? Yeah, throw the ball to you for that one.
Yeah, so we had several things come up this week that we're not even going to get into now because it may be moot, but if you've been keeping up with the news, you may have seen Trump threaten Apple with 25% tariffs. That's illegal, and I guess he was very quickly advised on the illegality of that. You can't target specific companies or devices with tariffs, so he said all smartphones will get a 25% tariff. And apparently this is a response to Tim Cook refusing to go with him on a trip to the Middle East, where he was apparently asking the Qatari government for a jet. If you're familiar with that story, that's that whole thing. He wanted Tim Cook to be there, I guess, and he's mad that he didn't go. So he wanted to punish him with a tariff that affected iPhones specifically. Then the Attorney General basically said, we're going to sue the California Attorney General. And there's this whole back and forth. There's this whole thing. We don't even need to get into it because, as we record yesterday, a U.S. trade court found there's so many lawsuits on these tariffs, by the way, that have been going on, and they've been kind of collected into this one thing. And a trade court basically evaluated the lawsuits and said, actually, I want to get the phrase right. There's a specific act. The Emergency Economic Powers Act has nothing to do with giving the president the ability to invoke tariffs or control trade at will. That is still a power of Congress. So therefore, everything Trump has done in regards to tariffs relating to Liberation Day, and even before that, there was tariffs around trafficking, is the claim, around the fentanyl crisis. All of those tariffs have now been rendered null because they are technically illegal. The court is so confident in their assessment that they skipped the judgment period and went straight to a ruling and basically ordered a permanent injunction against enforcing the tariffs. That technically means, as of now, there's no tariffs. Technically. That doesn't mean they've gone away, because the president can just choose to break the law, I guess, and then get sued. That it's going to be a whole thing. This is one of those things that's going to get taken to the Supreme Court. There's been no official response from the president, even on like True Social, in his usual social media way. Nothing's been said other than we're appealing. So I don't know. We have no idea what's happening. Even the stock market is just holding its breath, and nothing's changed dramatically, because you would assume tariffs gone, stock market skyrocket, right? Nothing, because we don't know. Is he just going to force the tariffs to be enforced anyway, even though it's illegal? Is he going to appeal to the Supreme Court and hope this could take months? So the minute we have information to share, we will share it. But this is interesting, very sudden news that we're not lawyers, so we can't tell you what the answer is. But I wanted to break down specifically. So Canada and Mexico, the 25% fentanyl specific, and then I guess later China, the fentanyl specific 25% tariffs are now voided. And then the Liberation Day tariffs, which started out as, I believe something like 71 countries had tariffs between 15 and 53% placed on them, which is astronomical in the first place. A month later, I'm giving him too much credit. A week later, he backed off those tariffs, made them all 10%, which is still really high. And then China was moved to like 125%, which is technically like 145% because of other tariffs. Anyway, that went away because he paused that too, gave exemptions to Apple. There was back and forth, but whatever the case, the 10% was always there on every other country in the world. Those are now gone. So even though there's a pause, even though the tariff reduction and back and forth, yada, yada, those are gone too, because those are still astronomically high compared to the regular tariff rate of like 2 or 3%. So we'll see.
One thing I think is where I assume this is also going away. I don't know, but there is the, I think, quite spurious investigation into the national security implications of semiconductor use. I call it spurious because it appeared to be created after Trump first gave Apple an exemption and then said he wasn't giving them. No, sorry, I'm getting the sequence wrong. Trump says there are no exemptions, then he gave Apple an exemption, then he denied he'd given Apple exemption, then they launched the national semiconductor thing. But it's spurious as well because the White House has already said what the result will be. The result it's prejudged the investigation and said there are tariffs coming from it. So are those gone as well? I don't know.
And those tariffs are still, that's complicated, right? So there is a separate tariff that it was held up by the court. I can't remember what it's called. It's aluminum and automotive manufacturing. There's a tariff that's like 25% on all vehicles sold in the United States. That is still in place. So theoretically, if he has this injunction or whatever put against semiconductors and rules that they need a tariff because it's a national security issue, this is not the Emergency Economic Powers Act. And technically, if Congress allows it, that would be allowed. So this is why this is all so confusing. We don't know, but technically, Trump could still pile a 25% or more tariff against Apple and all phones or against all semiconductor products based on those things. So it's still a mess. There's still a lot in the air. We're just going to have to play it by ear because we don't have any more information than you do at this point. So we'll see what happens.
One last thing to note, because I think it may have crossed everybody's minds as it slowly crossed mine. At present, while appeals are going on and all this stuff, the tariffs aren't there. So you could logically assume that Apple could try to do again what it did before these tariffs were first announced. It was expecting tariffs not as steep as they were, but it was expecting them. So it did what Tim Cook called build ahead, basically ramped up manufacturing and imported as many iPhones as it could. Like, wasn't it 5 aircraft full of it? I can't remember the figures now, but a huge number of iPhones and Macs and things. Since we are now in a similar waiting to see what happens next, Apple could do that again. There's got to be a limit to how much Apple can manufacture, but I think right now we're focusing on the iPhone 17, and it's too soon for that to be manufactured and brought in, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll see how everything goes, and price-wise, Apple has options. It won't mean prices will just go up in the United States no matter what. Apple's going to balance the books by making the prices go up around the world. Because even if other countries aren't levying these tariffs, they can reduce the cost of American users by making the iPhone cost more for everyone else as well. So don't expect that you're going to get away from this just because you're not in the United States. Sadly, this is going to affect all of us.
I get really caught up in this up to this, but you're right. You've got to end this now. We don't know enough. We're not lawyers. I'm not an economist. Let's move on to the other thing, which is completely different and totally cheery, and yet quite a bit substantially controversial. Tell me all about it.
So Texas followed Utah in passing a law, except Utah's already enforcing the law. They started enforcing it earlier in May. This Texas law won't go into effect until January. And so Apple, of course, is going to push back against it, maybe get it overturned. Who knows? There's a lot of time between now and then. But basically the law says Apple and Google, App Store providers, are required to verify the age of every user to verify whether or not they're children and pass that information to app developers. So the wording of the law is such that your weather app will now be able to know whether you're 40 or 14. And Apple says this is a blatant violation of privacy, and Apple doesn't want to have to collect that data on users. And the only way to verify that information is through collecting sensitive data, like driver's licenses or birth certificates or the like. So, and then they'd have to store that data and maintain it. Of course, Apple could come up with a way, I think, to do this private preservingly, but that's not the issue here. Because I've seen a lot of people arguing, oh, just, Apple, they're great. Google, that's too bad for them. Everybody's just going to have their stuff now. Let's put that aside. Apple, oh, sure, they'll develop this perfect privacy-preserving system, and everyone's ages will be verified properly. It'll all be great. That's not the issue. I'm sure Apple could come up with a technological way to do this. Fine. Apple's not going to do anything with our data. Fine. Those arguments aside, this is a bigger issue because this is the courts dictating speech, which is not allowed by the Constitution. I don't know how this law made it all the way to the governor's desk, honestly, but maybe it'll get overturned because Apple will take this to bigger courts. But basically the idea is you have to now as a parent provide information about your child to verify their identity, and then approve each app that is downloaded. Fine. You can do that now with parental controls. The issue is they're going to use this law, and we know that because they actually piggybacked a different law that is passed through the House. It is on the Senate's desk in Texas right now. This law will restrict all social media apps to be 18 plus. So Apple and Google would have to restrict all apps, Discord, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all apps to be 18 plus. And then using Apple's verification system to tell people which apps they can and can't use. Which means now you're artificially restricting what information, what people, anyone under the age of 18. I'm not talking about 7-year-olds, okay? This is between the ages of 13 and 18, right? That's generally the group of people we're talking about when we talk about these age verification laws, because you're not even supposed to be on social media legally anyway until you're at least 13 because of there's a Children Protection Act thing for the internet. Anyway, so between 13 and 18, you're now no longer able to access social media apps, which is a lifeline for a lot of teens. Like, this is attacking the ability for teens to communicate fundamentally. This is attacking a lot of basic rights. So maybe while the age verification isn't a direct violation of the Constitution, hopefully they will see that the restriction of social media is a violation of speech. But using that law to do this is the problem. It expands government power over the user. It can now dictate, Apple, that technology we required you to make, use it to silence this group of people. That is not okay.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot more in that than I realised. I was thinking, we've mentioned this on the show before, and there's plenty on AppleInsider.com about Apple's own plans for age verification that are rolling out throughout the rest of this year. I just thought this was related to that, but it seems deeper.
Well, I'm just going to say, because that was heavy, it's just one state. It is the second most populous state in the country, but there's several states considering different age verification laws. There's a lot of privacy implications. What are the apps doing with this data? There's so much here. If you guys want to discuss this with me or anything, you can always send me an email. It's fine. But I don't want people to take this at face value and say, oh, yeah, duh, for the children. We should just verify their ages and make sure they're not accessing apps they shouldn't. This goes way beyond that. And I'm with Apple on this one. I know, surprise, but it's so much more complicated than just age verification. Right. There's a lot of implications on top of it. And this isn't the end of it. And this isn't a federal thing. This is just one state. And it's not being enforced till January. So we'll see what happens from that. But I just wanted to point out not only that this happened, but the importance of discussing it. So, but yes, we can end Controversy Corner here.
I'd just like to echo that if you want to talk about it with Wes, you go straight ahead, right? And I might be in the queue. But with the end of Controversy Corner, unfortunately this week alone probably, I promised shiny and new for the end of the show. And I think I know what this is. I think I know that you like it more than I do. Is the newness, is the shininess going to make me a fan of whatever this thing is?
No, I just like that this is a feature. So Apple Invites, I'm the only user on Earth, I believe. We've been using it for a lot. We've had a lot of events lately, so it actually aligned very greatly. Apple released this app, and it just happened to be we had birthdays, and we had this combined bachelorette party thing. And
well, no, stop. A combined, but that's not how you do it. You're supposed to be separate. Right? Okay, that's another topic now. But
yeah,
okay.
We have a lot of pregnant people in our bridal party, so it's not like we're all going to go party or anything. So we had this whole thing. We had a lot of events. So
I was available, but okay. So you have lots of events, yes.
Yeah. So I've been using this, and it's great. And I've been showing my friends. Some of them, of course, say, "Oh, this is cool," and they've talked about using it. And family members have used it for their own birthday events. So I've noticed in my social circle, at least, because I've introduced them to it, it has appealed. A couple of people have rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, this is stupid. I can just text you." I get that sentiment, of course. Do what you need to do, but Apple has expanded the feature set of the Invites app with something actually quite useful, because this actually affects me directly. You can now add links, and you can add more than one link through the card system at the bottom. And because they're calling them tiles, and there's a separate tile section, it also hints at there should be more tiles coming. Hopefully we'll see third-party integration at some point. But for now, we have links, which means if I use Invites for my wedding invitation system, and I make a wedding website or a gift website or a money donation website or something, I can attach it to the invites card, which is nice.
Sorry, my mind just leapt on to, could there be a feature to automatically arrange the seating thing, and how would it do that, and keep Aunt Mabel away from Uncle Tony, and all that sort of stuff. That's where AI will save the day, but not yet. Okay.
I wanted to share my experience with this app specifically for that combined bachelorette party, because we sent out the invites to Android and iOS people. The party group was about 15 people total. I was able to send out alerts so I put out the initial plan through the text section. Then as I made reservations, I was able to update people about times and places that we were going to be, because the way I did it, we organized like kind of a bar crawl downtown. Okay. But you'll be surprised to note that we started at a cat cafe. So that was fun.
Of course, no, but hang on. If you were updating this in real time during a pub crawl, did your accuracy get worse and worse?
No. This is all during the setup. Once everyone was together, we didn't need the app anymore. But they were able to see the location through Apple Maps or of where we were going to meet first. I could share updates through the notification feature, which Android users get emails. And as the pub crawl was going, we took photos, and I wasn't the only one, right? Everyone in the group actually, funny enough, shared photos they were taking to the shared photo album, and the Android people were able to access the shared photo album and download the photos. Like, it was a universal success. It was really great. I'm very happy with how that turned out. So just wanted to point out that was a good experience with that app.
Okay, you sound so defensive of it, almost like I'm sorry it was good.
No. It's just annoying that, like, this is one of those things that people roll their eyes at, right? Oh God, Apple made an app. Ugh, sports. Who cares?
No, I'm not going to be with you on this. I'll be with you on sports because apparently, well, it's sports. What do I care? But on this one, I tried it and there were so many issues with it. I just thought, this is worthless, and I expect it to get better, and you're telling me it's getting better with these tile things, so inch by inch it'll be there, it'll carry on.
But as we close, I have breaking news, William.
Yes.
So it's called Deep Fusion Sweater Mode.
Okay.
And the main camera on iPhone is currently called the Fusion camera, but Deep Fusion is now part of a new system called the Photonic Engine. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Yes.
Reasonably sure that's what powers the Enterprise, but okay. That's the word, you've got it. So noted. That saved us all going off to look up these things as well. I should say at this point, for everybody who, like me, is not on your Apple Invites mailing list, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Blue Sky. Pretty active there. I have a Mastodon account. You can always reach me there. If you tag me, I'll see it. You can email me, wes@appleinsider.com. Please, if you have any feedback about the show or anything else, you can reach out there. And I want to mention again, the forums that we have on Apple Insider. That's actually not a bad spot these days. We're trying to keep it under control. You know how forums get, guys listening. Yes. You know how forums get. We're trying to keep that under control, but it's a pretty decent place to have conversations. We're trying to make it a better community for that. So maybe the nicer listeners on the show might want to come and join and help make it a nicer place. I don't know. But
something else I'm cut out of. Your invitations, the forums. Okay, I'll try being nice. I should point out a similar thing with me, william@appleinsider.com is the email address. Find me on YouTube on 58 Keys, so I love it there. But also, Wes, you missed one. You can be found lurking in the Apple Podcast Review section, can't you? Was there anything incredibly great or okay, a bit bad this week?
Well, so we actually got some really good reviews this week. All 5 stars. This actually pushed the whole carousel forward, so now you have to scroll really far to find any bad reviews, which is so thank you guys.
Excellent.
This is really nice.
Money well spent. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes, we paid for these are all of my alt accounts, actually. Okay. So starting from the top, a couple of these are truncated because I did the thing again where I accidentally copied the overview instead of opening each one. But anyway, first is Mr. Cat, simply the best. Listening to this show for years. Wesley and William are great together and provide a unique perspective. They appreciate insights on tech in the current international landscape. So thanks for that very kind review, 5 stars.
Yeah.
Mvela59, I recently discovered this podcast and it's been amazing. Brief but very complimentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Invaler 59. I think I knew the earlier Invalers myself, but okay, that's lovely to hear. Thank you.
RR1152, sounds like an auction block. Great podcast, very informative. I like the way you describe politics that affect Apple. So this is actually an older review, and I've truncated the update, but the update says William's voice is much better now.
Great, thank you.
This is one of the ones that pointed out the microphone, and they're saying that you sound very, very good now. So great. 5 stars. So now we have Eevee and Millie. Eevee is a great Pokemon. Thank you for that. Let's see. I love the show and the information you have about Apple products. I would like to say that most of the information you talk about prior to product releases is accurate. You do a great job. Please continue and don't change anything. Excellent. And then finally, Grow with Garcia. As a longtime listener of the AppleInsider Podcast, I can confidently say has become an essential part of my weekly routine. Appreciate the host's engaging dynamic and their ability to provide 2 distinct perspectives on Apple news. So thank you for that kind review.
Yeah, that's made me beam. Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay. One thing about subscribing to it and listening regularly, of course, there's a point where I should point out that there is more to Apple Insider. There's Apple Insider Plus for people who subscribe either directly through Patreon or via Apple Podcast subscriptions. And Wes, well, you had a very particular reason. We're doing the kind of pre-WWDC wish list, but you particularly this week wanted to cover tvOS, watchOS, and possibly HomeOS for the very big reason that next week we should be doing what?
We're going to talk about iOS and iPadOS because it is. I wanted to wait the longest because that's the ones most likely to leak. So that way maybe we'll sound very smart because our predictions will be based on the entire operating system leaking by then. But yes, that is the last week before WWDC, so that will be our final Apple Insider Plus before we know all. And yes, I'm very excited.
That's amazing. I get really thrilled about WWDC, more than the iPhone launch, everything. Every year I look forward to it. And it's never been bad. It's always been at least a bit good. Sometimes it's brilliant. And it sounds like this is going to be a cracking one, isn't it? So, as we inch ever closer to that, thank you very much for listening. Thank you too to our sponsor, Fast Growing Trees. And we will listen to you. Of course we will listen to you, but we'll also speak to you from next week, unless you want to stick around for Apple Insider Plus. If you don't already do that, details in the show notes, and we'll speak to you next time.
Yep, talk then.